Hi, so today I want to talk a little bit about motivation, and if you clicked on this video, I'm guessing you probably ran out of motivation. So I want to give you 3 tips for both long-term motivation and short-term motivation to keep them up and for you to continue in your journey towards your PhD. So I'm Charlotte Fraza, a second-year PhD student in computational neuroscience. And I've been seeing around me that a lot of my fellow PhD students do struggle a lot with motivation, myself included. So that's why I wanted to dive into this topic today. So the first thing I want to make really clear is that for me, there's a super distinct separation between long-term motivation and short-term motivation. So short-term motivation is this motivation that we feel that we really want to start our project and keep on going, etc., etc. But this type of motivation is, by my experience, really fickle. So it could be that it's there some days, but it could also be that you have to work without it. And one thing that I realized pretty quickly in my PhD is that it's not necessarily motivation that gets the work done, but it's more discipline and habits. So in the book Atomic Habits by James Clear, he talks about these atomic habits that people should have every day to make progress. And once I read this book, I really started to think about an atomic habit that I want to set for my PhD. So I decided that the most important thing for me to finish my PhD is to do my coding every single day. So my coding work is the main part of my PhD. So I try to block in a focus block of around 3 hours every day and really only work on coding. So I'm only allowed to do that. I'm not allowed to do research or lectures or read some papers, because although this is really important, I think during your PhD it's so easy to just get lost in this and just to keep on doing this kind of procrastination work and feeling really productive, but in the end of the day you haven't accomplished something. So think about what your main part of your thesis is going to be about. And it could be coding, or it could be literature research, or it could be doing some data experiments. And try to make those the main focus of your day. And on a related note, my second tip is to keep these short-term goals. So try to, when you have your entire PhD in front of you, it may seem like this super big monster, but trust me, if you cut it up into tiny parts, it is doable. So try to think of what you can do this week, this month, and today, and really try to make your entire PhD as small as possible. So really divide it up into tiny chunks and see what can I do today and how can I make the best of my day or time today. And I think by doing this, you kind of relax a little bit and allow yourself to just work without stressing too much about the entire project. And my last tip is more related to stress. So for me personally, when I'm under a lot of stress, I actually have a hard time thinking clearly. So for me, it works a lot better to just take a step back, go for a walk or go for a run, do a little exercise when I feel I cannot focus or have no motivation to focus. So I think if you are feeling really negative things, it's okay to take a step back and to just see your research from a distance. And by taking a walk, for example, and just thinking it over in a different environment, you perhaps find the solution that you're stuck on, or re-find your motivation to keep on working towards your next tiny goal. So yeah, secondly, I want to talk a little bit about long-term motivation. And I think long-term motivation is very much correlated to our why. So why are we doing our PhD? Why did we start? What do we want to do after? And all these more existential kind of thoughts. So until now, I've seen different types of reasons why people lose their long-term motivation, and perhaps you can recognize yourself in one of them, and I will try to give you a solution. So the first one I want to talk about is imposter syndrome. So imposter syndrome is this deep sense or this feeling that you're somewhere where you're actually not allowed to be, or you're faking it. and that people will slowly uncover the secrets of your identity and will see that you're actually a false or a fake type of person. And I think this is really prevalent amongst researchers because our field is changing so much, and the knowledge that we have to have is so vast nowadays that there's always gaps in our knowledge. And I think as PhD students, we finally become really aware of what we know and what we don't know. So for me personally, I came from a background of physics, and then I studied more artificial intelligence and a little bit of programming. And finally, I transferred towards full neuroscience. But because of this background, I always felt that I was never really good at any one of them. And all my fellow PhD students in my field have a similar type of scattered background, so they feel very similar, that they're or not very good at programming, or they're not very good at the neuroscience stuff, or they're not very familiar with the biology. So I think because as a PhD student, you finally realize how much you don't know, you feel this sense of imposter syndrome. And for me, a solution towards this was just kind of accepting that I feel like this. So just accepting that I sometimes don't feel the smartest in the room, or that I sometimes feel that my professor may think that I don't know as much as that he hopes I know. And I think once you accept this, you will also let go a little bit of the fear that people will find out. And also it can be a motivator to learn a lot more. So if you really feel you are not knowledgeable enough in a certain field, it could be a prompt for you to start working more towards that field. But from my experience, and also talking with people that are a bit further down the line, this fear of imposter syndrome never really goes away. So if you have it and you're struggling with it, just accept it and just imagine that everyone around you feels the same. And I think this already can give some relief. And the second type of long-term motivation problems that I see are more related to our why we started. I think the reason why we start at the beginning our PhD can be very different than the reason why we continue. So for me, the reason that I started, and I think for a lot of people it's similar, is that I did want to become perhaps a professor or continue in the field of the university track towards professorship. But doing research and working in this more hierarchical field, I kind of realized that this was not what I want to be doing, because professors are actually not doing that much research. They're mostly writing letters for funding or checking other people's work. So they're actually not doing that much research themselves. They're more thinking about big ideas or managing. And I kind of realized quite soon that this wasn't what I wanted for my future. So I really had to rethink what my PhD could bring for me and for my life. And rethinking this, I kind of know now that I want to do more on outreach and more towards these type of educational videos, or perhaps go into a really big research team where I work with more people, because a PhD journey is a pretty lonely journey. But I still think my PhD can give me a lot of credit and a lot of opportunity to learn so many skills that will be helpful for my future. So for example, because I know I want to do a little bit more with outreach and also the border between AI and society, I'm gonna go with a friend of mine to this conference about AI and democracy. And I think for me, by realizing what I want to do in the future with my PhD, and also make better choices right now as to what I want to do right now. And the last point I also want to touch upon why you are maybe struggling with your long-term motivation during your PhD is if you're really tired or really anxious for multiple days, and you also have this tied up with your lack of motivation, these could actually be the first signs of a burnout. And if you're feeling like this, I would really recommend you to reach out, because the problem may not be something solvable by yourself, but you kind of need a system or some help from the outside to guide you towards more healthy habits or a healthier workplace. because it could also be something outside of you that is causing this stress. Yeah, and I think burnout is just such a detrimental feeling for us because it really is not something that can be solved immediately. And I also made a video about it, so if you are feeling like this, maybe you can check it out and see if that can help you a little bit. But again, I want to reiterate, do reach out to someone and talk to your friends, your family, or perhaps even a therapist. So yeah, please stay safe and healthy, take care of yourself. And if you have any tips or tricks for me as to how to deal with motivation, I would love to hear them and put them in the comments down below. And see you next time. Bye.